Can you hear me, Mike?
Oops. Let's do a test. Is that you, Rob?
That is me, Mike.
Hold on, I've got to turn up I usually use a headset, so this is a good test. There. Can you say something nice to me?
How are you, Michael?
Yeah, good, Rob. Thank you.
I just wanted to jump in really quick. My name's Jordan. I'm the committee clerk, but we are live on YouTube. So I just wanted to know that this is being broadcast. We're just taking a quick break from the morning session, and people should be back.
Thank you.
Sooner rather than later. I think we were planning on starting up at 2:00.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Tim?
Hey guys, did you catch any of the hearings this morning?
I did. I listened in to a few of them.
I hope that you all are prepared to discuss conflicts.
Hey, I'm retired.
And I think it's mostly for my benefit, to be honest.
Tim, welcome. I will let you know. I don't know if you caught what I was telling Robert and Michael earlier, but we are live. Just putting it out there. Wanted to make sure everyone's aware.
Jordan, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it a few more minutes until we have a quorum.
Do any of the excuse me, do any of the committee members know if we're waiting on anyone who may be missing the Zoom link or anything of that sort that I could send out? I know with the change in Zooms, it's potentially a little weird.
It's a good question, Jordan. I'm not sure that's the issue, but
Cool. I just wanted to make sure.
yeah. Thank you. No, I think we do need a senator before we can proceed.
We could always move to demand the attendance of absent members.
believe Senator Vitelli is on her way.
Representative Perry, if you're okay with it, I will, if Senator Vitelli is going to be here shortly, I will move the nominees over to the attendees list until they are up for their hearing, if that works.
That makes sense. That
All right,
makes
perfect.
sense. And thanks everyone for your patience. We'll beam you over to the attendee side of the screen and simplify the committee structure here. Bring you back during your testimony after you're presented by the commissioner. Okay, and it looks like Senator Vitelli's with us, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We just barely have a quorum. Thank you, Senator Vitelli. You are with us, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. There's a little background noise. Do you want to mute yourself, or would it be easier if someone did it for you? I think it's that famous Arousik broadband that we're experiencing now. Okay, so I think we're good, and we'll go ahead and get started. Jordan, do you want to take us live on YouTube?
We are live.
Great. Well, welcome everyone to the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. We introduced ourselves earlier today. Just briefly for anyone tuning in, my name is Seth Berry. I'm the House Chair of the committee, and with me today we have Senator Eloise Vitelli, Representative Nicole Grahowski, Representative Steve Foster, Representative Barb Wood, Representative Nate Wadsworth, and Representative Nathan Carlo. We are here today to continue confirmation hearings as we began with this morning, and other members of the committee who have work and other obligations may be joining us during the course of the afternoon as they're able to do, and as we go through the important work of the day. This is a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for the purpose of considering the nomination by the governor of Mr. Michael C. Reed of Palermo for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. I will shortly be asking Representative Grahowski to make a motion on this nomination. Under the law and joint rules of the legislature, this committee is required to hold this public hearing and to recommend confirmation or denial of the nominee by majority vote of the committee members present and voting. And as chairs of the committee, we will then, Senator Lawrence and I will then send written notice of the committee's recommendations to the President of the Senate. The committee will hear testimony from and have an opportunity to question the governor's representative, Commissioner Johnson, the nominee, and any other persons present who wish to speak for or against the nomination. We are currently live streaming on YouTube on the committee's channel. So if you're a participant in the meeting on the panelist screen in Zoom, then you can be seen and heard if you're unmuted. You know, all of your facial expressions and background noise will be there for the full viewing pleasure of the public. Just keep that in mind. The meeting is recorded and available to view on the YouTube channel afterwards as well. So with that, pursuant to Title III, Section 157 of the Maine statutes, which requires that there be an affirmative motion to recommend confirmation of the nominee, the chair recognizes Representative Nicole Grahowski for the purpose of making such a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Mr. Michael C. Reed of Palermo for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority.
Thank you, Representative Grahowski. Copy of the statutory requirements for this position is available online at legislature.maine.gov. And I now recognize, the chair recognizes Commissioner Heather Johnson for the purpose of making a statement representing the governor concerning this nomination.
Thank you, Representative Berry, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Heather Johnson, and I'm the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. I'm here today on behalf of the governor to speak in support of the appointment of Michael Reed of Palermo to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Michael Reed has 50 years of business experience in multiple states, much of it related to telecommunications and broadband. He is a self-employed technology consultant and provides consulting services for a Maine company called Mission Broadband, where he consults with towns and other entities in multiple states, aiding them in improving their broadband in their areas. He also acts as the Executive Vice President for the Technology Association of New England. Mr. Reed has provided testimony to regulatory agencies in multiple states, as well as to the Federal Communications Commission, and has worked on complex state legislative affairs. In addition, Michael's experience includes network operations, outside plant operations, large project management, community, and public relations. Michael Reed's extensive experience in telecommunications and broadband will make him an excellent addition to the Maine Connectivity Authority, and I urge you to support his nomination. Mr. Reed will be one of the 3 members who possess expertise in advanced communication technology infrastructure or communication services. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. The chair would ask if any member of the committee has questions of Commissioner Johnson at this time. And seeing none, I think you anticipated the primary question the committee members might have had. Thank you very much. And we will then go on to a statement by the nominee himself. The chair recognizes Mr. Michael C. Reed for the purpose of making a statement concerning your nomination. Welcome and thank you for coming forward. And Mr. Reed, you are muted. See if we can.
You would never think that we've all spent a year and a half doing this and I still don't do the mute.
You're not alone. Happens to me every
Well,
day.
just so you know, what I said earlier was just great. So good afternoon, Representative Berry, members of the Energy Utilities and Technology Committee. My name is Michael Reed. I'm a resident of Palermo, and I'm truly honored to be nominated by Governor Mills to become a member of the Maine Connectivity Authority. You know, we don't need to talk about the gaps that we have in Maine and across the country. And we need to be able to fill those gaps and make sure that we meet the needs of our future needs as that we know. It's really encouraging, and I say that having been in the business a very long time, to see the support that we're getting from Washington in the terms of real funding. We're in a unique position to be able to secure some of that funding and make some really large strides in meeting our broadband needs in this state. The creation of the Maine Connectivity Authority is a crucial tool that's going to allow us to manage that available funding and coordinate. That's a big word for me, coordinate the use of this funding. Commissioner Johnson she described more of my background than I will go over again. But that background, I believe, will provide some of the experience that we need on the board to ensure that we meet all of what we need in each community or each group of communities to balance need, feasibility, cost. In other words, I can't say it better than say, make sure we get the biggest bang for the buck. As Commissioner Johnson said, I'm self-employed at this point. I'm a consultant. I work with communities in Maine as well as other states. I work with providers. We're working with a provider in New Hampshire right now on a very large project. All of it is very closely intertwined. Small communities I work with, island communities, large groups of communities. And one thing I can tell you is they're all very unique. We work with communities whose alternative is to build their own network. Others with private-public partnerships. All of that is a result of detailed analysis and, again, the feasibility of doing that. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. I certainly would appreciate the support of this committee, but my real goal if I'm nominated for this seat, we have an opportunity, and it would be my goal to make sure that we have high-speed connectivity universally available to all residents, businesses, and community anchor institutions in this state. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. And the chair would now ask if any member of the committee has questions of Mr. Reed. And I'll begin with Representative Foster.
Thank you, Chair Berry, and thank you, Mr. Reed, for your willingness to serve in this capacity. I do have a question. I had, as I mentioned earlier today, expressed concerns with forming this authority during the work in committee on the bill, in that we already had Connect Maine. They were utilizing funds, both government and combining those, if you will, with public tax money in different communities, what have you, to try to address the lack of broadband high-speed internet in the state. I'm wondering if you could explain to me why you think that the authority under direction of the board with you as a participant would be more efficient, if you will, or can get us more bang for the buck, considering the fact that we now have more money coming in, which obviously would also be a great boom to Connect Maine. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Foster. That's a really terrific question. And I have thought a lot about this. In fact, some folks may have heard me make this statement before. This opportunity we have right now with the recognition that is across the nation on how badly we need broadband and how badly we need connectivity for all of we can go into all the reasons: healthcare, critical need; education, critical need. It's being met with support. So far, some of it's alleged support. We haven't seen the dollars yet, but I'm sure the check's in the mail. I feel very strongly that we need to maximize that opportunity at the highest levels in the state. We have a very effective Connect Maine authority. I interact with those people. They're two people. This is some big money that's coming our way. They are going to need some overarching support, and let's just say horsepower from the higher reaches of this government so that we can make sure we maximize and coordinate that support. It's not that Connect Maine doesn't do the job. They certainly do a job for the resources they have. This is going to require some additional resources, some additional input. And I'll just say I'm very pleased to be considered part of expertise level that I think we can really add to how we get the biggest bang for the buck. And I listened into nominee Chandler earlier today, and I think John did a great job describing how we've got to get under the hood on each one of these. Well, we need to get under the hood on how we're going to fund it and how we can maximize some of this money from the state. So it's a very long answer, Representative Foster, but I think we need to step up and put the state in a position of this. I'm calling it a 3-year opportunity that we have. 3 years to get it all coordinated and get it lined up, and probably another 2 to make sure we get it built. But I'm looking at a very exciting 3 to 5 year period.
Representative Foster. Yes.
Yes, if I may, another question, Mr. Chair. So in your materials that you presented to us, and I think also in your introductory message, you mentioned that you've worked with quite a few municipalities, towns. I'm wondering if any of those are in central or northern Maine communities that I might be more familiar with, and if so, what type of projects you worked with them on? Thank you.
I would be delighted to fill you in on everything except we're under contract, and I'm not sure where the committee in that particular town, but yes, central, northern Maine. I'm taking a trip next week up to Caribou to meet with NMDC. So we're all over the state. I have a community I'm working with, if you can take my word from it. I live in Palermo. They're within 20 miles of me, and another one that's within 18 miles of me. At the same time, we work with a large community, not actually one of our small cities that we're working with on a project. So we're covering the gamut. Let me just put it that way, Representative Foster, across the state.
Great. And next up, Representative Grahowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Reed, for being here and being so interested in this important organization. It's an exciting time. And like you said, a short runway, a 3-year project perhaps, and hopefully more. I wanted to say that I was impressed that the town of Brooksville Broadband Committee wrote a letter in support of your nomination. I think that is a community adjacent to my district that I know has struggled for a long time with access out on the Blue Hill Peninsula, and that they said they really appreciated working with you. And I also noted in your submission that your group Mission Broadband is technology neutral and technology provider neutral, which really resonated with me, that there are so many different solutions. And I know that it sounds like you can't say other specific communities, but I wondered how do you see what is such an individualized process that you engage with at a community? How do you take that up a notch to where you won't be able to be drilling down into those weeds as a board member, but provide a structure by which those communities can thrive?
One thing I can tell you from the opportunity and sitting with many select boards and broadband committees, every single community is different. Their needs are different. Their desire in some cases or need for broadband is sometimes different because of their circumstances. Bedroom community, everybody's working from home. You've heard some, I can't even say enough about telemedicine right now and the critical nature of that. But the process is, it's really a step-by-step. You have to identify what you need. You have to evaluate what's available in your community. You also have to evaluate how your community feels about this. There are communities who vote down whatever their broadband committee has been working on for months or years sometimes. So there's that piece of it. There's the investigation into the public-private partnership opportunities. Are any of the incumbent providers or even nearby providers who may not serve that particular town specifically, they may be interested in providing service to the town once we meet with them. So we often establish meetings with those people. We have to take a good deep dive into funding that is either been done, for example, Connect America funding that you've seen some rounds. I'll mention 4/1. Don't anyone get angry, but that was the first round of CAF funding. And then it was 10/1. The current RDOF reverse auction you've probably heard about is 25/3. None of us want to aim for that goal. But at the same time, if we're supporting communities and trying to help them decide, if someone received RDOF funding in their particular community, they're not going to get federal funding to overbuild that. So all of these things, when I said in my opening remarks, coordinated, that's part of what I'm talking about. We have to evaluate all these opportunities and make sure, as Representative Barry mentioned, overbuilding. Sometimes that's the only solution. And I can give you an example of that in another state that we're working on right now, that the incumbent provider, it's an island in the middle of the Atlantic. The current provider was not interested in continuing to invest. The community decided we're building our own network. And we've been engaged with those folks for a year right now. We're project managing the actual placement of the fiber cable and all the equipment that goes with that. So there's an example. We went all the way to the other, working with a community I can mention in New Hampshire. We're actually being retained to be the middle person between an incumbent provider and the town. They want a public-private partnership, but the town wished to have our support and help evaluating the contract and make sure everything was in place. So again, I'm sorry, it's a very long answer, but it's every single community is different, and their needs are different, but we have to make sure the one thing that we do stress, or I stress, I should be talking about myself rather than the company I'm consulting for right now, but I don't like to do anything in a community that I don't believe is going to ensure that they're eligible for funding down the road. So it's not like, okay, we're going to sell you a survey. You know, if you did a survey a year ago, you don't need a survey. So let's just focus on things that are going to position you perhaps for a Connect Main grant, perhaps for an NTIA grant. They're very similar requirements, but we try to guide, I try to guide communities in those directions.
Any follow-up, Representative Grochowski?
Thank you. Sort of a different question that I've been asking other folks, if you had any experience serving on other boards. I'm not sure if I saw that or not. And if you did, or maybe other organizations you've been in any leadership roles with, that you had any relevant experience that would affect your service here.
No public boards, Representative Grochowski, but I have been on numerous association boards, industry boards. I was chair of the New York State Telecommunications Association for a number of years. The New England Regional, as I said, I'm part-time executive vice president for the telephone. Oh, we just changed Telecommunications Association of New England. And so that's my board experience, is a lot of it, but it's all industry or industry association related.
Great. And Representative Grochowski.
Lastly, if I may, I want to just put a plug in as it seems appropriate. Come visit anytime. Just a mile up the road from where I am right now is the Telephone Museum in Ellsworth. So everyone should feel welcome to come and visit.
Know those folks well.
Thought you might.
Well, some of that antique equipment I might have put in, but we won't go there.
Mr. Reed, I think you and I go way back, because I came onto the committee in 2007, around the time that Fairpoint was coming onto the scene here in Maine. And
yes,
I seem to recall that you, did you ever, were you ever under the Fairpoint tent in Fort Kent for the dog sled races?
You bet.
Handing out hot chocolate. I think I had some of it.
You bet.
Yes, thank you for
One
that.
of my favorite things to do. We have some great friends up there.
Right.
Great friends up there.
So there we go. We go way back. It's good to see you again. And I wanted to ask you to just elaborate a little more on that overbuilding. You mentioned overbuilding. I think to some overbuilding, is a bad thing. To others, it means competition, which drives down prices, improves service, and so on. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And is there a place for that kind of activity in the scope of the new Maine Connectivity Authority under the right circumstances?
Yes. The short answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
But each of the circumstances is unique. In some of the communities we're talking about, it's difficult enough to get broadband without the hope for competition to be able to drive prices down. So, getting, for example, in a public-private partnership, make sure you partner with a provider that's going to ensure that you have comparable pricing as they have in the rest of the state or New England. And a lot of it's national pricing for the big ones. There are cases where, again, I'm trying to think of a specific case. You have a part of the community that's completely unserved, and you have to build fiber to get there. There's a case to be made for offering that service along the road. Again, if we're not stepping on the toes of former funding or potential future funding. So if we're going after an NTIA grant, let me use something else, a Reconnect grant, you can't overbuild a federally funded project. Hopefully, when we see the new Treasury guidelines, they're going to say things like 100 over 100. We're hoping for that kind of flexibility. And boy, does that change that scenario then, Representative Berry, because, if you've got 10 over 1 and you've got a chance to get 100 over 100, no one's going to argue with that.
That's great. Thank you. And just for the record, and I confess I haven't read your packet as closely as I should have. Remind us if you see any potential conflict of interest, and if you could speak to whether you think that the board needs to spend a little time defining that term as it begins its work.
Oh, I think the board must do that. But I have to tell you that I'm familiar with many of the, well, 1, 2, 3, 4 other board members, and I know this sounds like an empty promise. I can assure you that with the individuals that I'm familiar with, it will be very carefully reviewed of any conflict. The last thing we can afford as a state is to have a board in place that's going to help solve this problem. Again, I keep talking about this 3 to 5 year window. We can't in any way compromise that. We've got to be upfront. We've got to be fully open. And in fact, I've already started to kind of just migrate most of my efforts with my client to other states. Certainly won't abandon any of my main clients, but we have very qualified staff that I work with. So we're just going to make sure we minimize or avoid any sorts of those. I have worked in almost every exchange in the state. I got to have a conflict here somewhere, including the islands. I worked for TDS Telecom for a while, so I'm very Matinicus. We can talk about that all day long. So sure, but the people that the governor chose and the language that is contained in the statute to make darn sure we have the tool to avoid those and recuse ourselves, I think is going to make a very strong, transparent board.
Great, thank you. And just as a follow-up, because the statute is a minimum, not a maximum. You would favor potentially additional bylaws pertaining to conflict.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
We can't be too careful.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Representative Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Reed, I think some people like Representative Barry really have known you for a while. I don't. And so I'm just curious that the past few years as a consultant, you've been doing most of your work in technology, broadband, and I see on your sheet that you were with Consolidated Communication and Fairpoint before that, and you just mentioned TDS Telecom. What positions did you hold there? Were they technology related or?
Oh, sure. We can, let me start way back. New England telephone days where I put in equipment that no longer matters. But no, I was a technician, a technical installer, putting in switching equipment, microwave equipment, all the way through management positions. I had a wide range of regulatory and legislative roles. That went through New England Tel to 9X days, where, external relations, and then I would go back to operations where I had all of the switching equipment, all of the technicians that installed the fiber cables or copper cables, and the equipment, the installers for the homes all reported to me. So I had that background. I then was contacted by TDS. I went to work for them. I was pretty much external relations in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, and Pennsylvania, where I did the regulatory and legislative work. Again, Representative Barry knows I've testified a few times in this committee regarding technical issues. Fairpoint contacted me towards the end of the bankruptcy proceeding and asked me to become the state president for Maine and work through these things. So I had the folks in Maine reporting to me. And then ultimately after Consolidated, I was state president for Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. So I've lived and worked in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And if you can ask me which one I prefer, but the answer is going to be the same. As long as I'm in one of them, I'm really happy. We're blessed to live in a great part of the country. So
yes, thank you.
But right now, Maine's my favorite.
Well, my favorite too. Thank you. I just needed a little more information.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Representative Wood. Any other questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, we will go on to testimony by the public. Comments from persons attending the hearing who wish to speak for or against this nomination. Jordan, do we have anyone who has signed up?
It does not appear so.
Okay, then we'll skip over that part, and that will conclude the hearing portion. All public comments having been taken, the committee will now review any additional written comments on the nomination that have been received by the committee, vote on the nomination, and notify the President of the Senate pursuant to Title III MRSA Section 157 and the joint rules. The vote must be taken within 35 days from the date of the governor's written notice, June 29th, I believe. And this hearing by the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Mr. Michael C. Reed of Palermo for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. And in accordance with the law, the committee may not vote on this nomination sooner than 15 minutes after the close of the public hearing, unless all committee members who are present agree. At this time, therefore, the chair will inquire whether any member present objects to taking the vote immediately. And seeing no objection, we will go ahead to a vote. The pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend to the Senate of the 130th Maine Legislature that the nomination of Mr. Michael C. Reed of Palermo for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. In accordance with 3 MRSA Chapter 6, Section 157, and with the joint rules of the 130th Legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending confirmation. A vote of no will be against the motion to recommend confirmation. Is the committee ready for the question? And seeing no hands, the committee clerk will call the roll.
I will start with Senator Lawrence. Senator Lawrence is absent. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Senator Vitelli is a yes. Senator Stewart. Senator Stewart is absent. Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy. Representative Cuddy is absent. Representative Grahowski.
Yes.
Representative Grahowski is a yes. Representative Kessler. Representative Kessler is absent. Representative Ziegler. Representative Ziegler is absent. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood is a yes. Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth is a yes. Representative Grignon. Representative Grignon is absent. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster is a yes. And Representative Carlo.
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes.
I am back, Jordan.
Senator Lawrence.
Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. So that is 8 in favor, none opposed, with the remaining absent. So 5 absences.
8 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative. It is the vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Mr. Michael C. Reed of Palermo for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. Congratulations, Mr. Reed, and thank you again for stepping up and for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
See you soon. Okay, and that will bring us to Mr. Souza, and hope I'm saying that name correctly. Just give me a moment here to pull up the paperwork. Okay, and this is a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for the purpose of considering the nomination by the governor of Mr. Robert J. Souza of Durham for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Under the law and joint rules of the legislature, this committee is required to hold this public hearing and to recommend confirmation or denial of the nominee by majority vote of the committee members present and voting. The chairs of the committee will send written notice of our recommendations to the President of the Senate based on the outcome of today's hearing and vote. The committee will hear testimony from and have an opportunity to question the governor's representative, the nominee, and other persons present who wish to speak for or against. We are still live on YouTube. And again, I'll be recognizing Representative Grahowski shortly. Pursuant to Title III, Section 157 of the Maine statutes, which requires that there be an affirmative motion to recommend confirmation of the nominee, the chair recognizes Representative Grahowski for the purpose of making such a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Mr. Robert J. Souza of Durham for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority.
And a copy of the statutory requirements for this position is available online. The chair now recognizes Commissioner Johnson again for the purpose of making a statement concerning this nomination. Welcome back.
Great. Thank you, Representative Berry, Senator Lawrence, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is still Heather Johnson, and I am the Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development. I'm here today on behalf of the governor to speak in support of the appointment of Robert Souza of Durham to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Robert is recently retired from a 46-year career in telecommunications and knows every aspect of the industry. He began his career as a journeyman's helper splicing cable and retired as president and CEO of Otelco Inc., a provider of broadband internet, telephone, and cable television services in 6 states: Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, West Virginia, Alabama, and Missouri. During his time at Otelco, the company greatly expanded their broadband offerings, particularly in rural areas where it was often difficult and cost prohibitive to do so. Robert's vast experience will make him a valuable addition to the Maine Connectivity Authority, and on behalf of the governor, I urge you to support his nomination. He will be one of the 3 members who possess expertise in advanced communications technology infrastructure or communication services. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Are there questions for Commissioner Johnson from the committee? All right, seeing none, we will proceed to hear from Mr. Souza himself. Welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Representative Berry, Senator Lawrence, members of the Joint Standing Committee of Energy, Utilities, and Technology. As you know, my name is Robert Souza, and I am from Durham. And my friends, colleagues, and acquaintances call me Rob. I am pleased to be here today to discuss with you my nomination to the Maine Connectivity Authority Board of Directors. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. My testimony will be brief, but hopefully informative of my qualifications to serve and helpful as you consider my nomination. As was stated, my career in telecom spans 46 years, where for roughly 39 of those years, I worked what are commonly known as independent telephone companies. Companies with roots that date back to the beginning of the telegraph and telephone industries, and companies that serve some of the most rural parts of Maine and the country. Locations that Ma Bell chose not to serve based on the lack of profitability in serving such sparsely populated areas. Approximately 18 months ago, I retired as president and CEO of Otelco Inc. When I retired in 2019, Otelco had operations in Alabama, Maine, Massachusetts, Missouri, Vermont, and West Virginia. Again, in areas of these states never served by the Bell system or its successors. In 2008, Otelco purchased Pine Tree Networks and combined its operation with Mid-Maine Communications, another independent phone company that served communities to the north and south of the greater Bangor area. In my time as CEO, I oversaw the refinancing of the company's debt, consolidation of multiple billing and support systems across Otelco's entire footprint, the restructuring of the company's approach to leadership and management of our personnel, and the successful participation in the FCC's Alternative Connect America cost modeling program, committing to provide broadband services to underserved and unserved areas of our company. Prior to my position as CEO, I was Senior Vice President of Operations for Otelco, and during my 11 years with the company, we wrestled with the economics of providing high-speed internet connectivity to areas where the cost to serve was prohibitive. During my tenure, Otelco filed for and received grants from the Connect Maine Authority that permitted our company to apply additional funding to build fiber optic connectivity to sparsely populated areas of our territory. From 2001 to 2008, I was president of Pine Tree Networks, a company that provided service to Gray, New Gloucester, Buxton, Hollis, Waterboro, and small portions of the surrounding towns. I oversaw the integration and combination of the Pine Tree Telephone Company and Saco River Telephone Company when Saco River was purchased by Country Road Communications in 2001. During this time period, the transition from dial-up internet to DSL had begun, and the challenges long copper loops presented in reaching 100% of our customers with what was then known as high-speed service were great. I served as an outside plant engineer and then operations manager between 1985 and 2000 for Saco River Telephone Company, planning for the construction of poles, cables, and wires, and then overseeing the maintenance and upkeep of this infrastructure. In 2001, Saco River was acquired by Country Road Communications and was folded into their other telecom holdings, which included the Pine Tree Telephone Company, doing business as Pine Tree Networks. I won't tire you with the additional high-level details of my entire work history, but as was stated, I wanted you to know that I began my career in 1973 as a journeyman's helper in a manhole in Biddeford, Maine, splicing large copper cables. If approved to serve as a board member, I believe my wide-ranging 46 years of telecom experience will help support the objectives and goals of the Maine Connectivity Authority, providing high-speed connectivity to the citizens of Maine that live in areas difficult to serve. I thank you for and appreciate your consideration of my appointment and look forward to answering any questions you may have of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. And are there questions from the committee? We'll begin with Representative Foster.
Thank you, Chair Barry. Thank you, Mr. Souza. So time flies and things change quickly. I'm sure when you were an apprentice in that hole in the ground splicing copper, you probably wouldn't even have envisioned at that time that one day, many years ago now, someone likewise would be splicing fiber to replace that copper. And now, as a matter of fact, AT&T just announced that in 3 years they will have invested by the end of this year $150 million, 500 new towers, and going to 5G. So my question is, as I've brought this up before with the folks from Connect Maine, and I will ask you the same. We're looking at spending a lot of money to string fiber, if you will, in all parts of Maine. And where would you see us as this 5G technology progresses, which I understand in some areas will replace cable, if you will? Thank you. And obviously your position on the board is something the board will be faced with looking at these issues as time goes forward in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Foster. As I think others have stated, not only this morning, but this afternoon, I think that all technologies need to be looked at. Whether you're using fiber as a middle mile to reach some of those towers that are going to be constructed, or at least towers where 5G is going to be added, that's a great solution, because there are certain areas where wireless just may have to be the last mile. I don't believe it's always the best solution, only for the fact that with a fiber, we talked about, or at least Mike Reed talked about 4/1 going to 25/3 and 100/100. It probably won't be long before folks are going to want a gigabit over some type of service. And while 5G definitely has the capability of delivering vastly more data than what is currently available, I think fiber to the side of your house obviously is going to be the best option. Having stated that, when you look at the amount of money that the Maine Connectivity Authority is going to be tasked with utilizing, there are probably going to be options where fiber makes the most sense, wireless may make the most sense, and who knows, other technologies may be the most cost-effective way of providing broadband.
Any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Representative?
Thanks, no.
Great. Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Representative Grahowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Souza. Your background and full career certainly seems applicable to this appointment. I'm not sure if I saw or heard of any other boards you've served on, but if you have any and any relevant experience to share, I'd be interested what perspectives you've gained from that service that you would apply here.
Certainly, as CEO of Otelco, which was a relatively small publicly traded company, I was a member of that board. And prior to being appointed as CEO, I was asked to attend those board meetings to provide information. At the time, I was president of the company and was tasked with keeping the board up to date with what was going on. In addition to that, obviously in a volunteer capacity, I have served on a number of church boards and school boards in a volunteer position there. So I guess it's run the gambit from the financial side to the local side, and have had the opportunity to hopefully provide some service and benefit to those boards.
Any follow-up, Representative Grahowski? All right. I will allow myself a question. Could you speak about a little more, elaborate a little more on kind of the range of solutions with respect to ownership that we see in the landscape, the high-speed internet landscape right now, from purely privately owned, privately operated, funding those efforts all the way over to municipal, publicly owned networks, many of which are typically I think they're privately operated, but in some cases I suppose that may not be the case. I'm not sure. Are those all solutions that we need, and to what extent?
I believe they are in their right place. I'll echo what I think Mike Reed said a little bit earlier. If there are existing providers, whether it happens to be a cable company or a telecom, that exist in that area looking to leverage their capabilities, and partnering with them may be the most cost-effective way of expanding the broadband and the quickest way to expand the broadband. As I'm sure that you have heard in your experience on this committee, one of the most expensive parts of building fiber cable, if that's what you're doing, is make ready. If a company already has a strand and cable in place, and the company can then overlash or overbuild on that existing facility, it is far more cost effective to do it that way. But Otelco has participated in partnerships in the past. So I have some experience there, and I believe that in the right places, that makes perfect sense. And we can leverage the expertise of the local community coupled with this authority and hopefully get, as again, Mike Reed said, the biggest bang for our buck.
Great. And as a follow-up to that, the committee recently approved, and the legislature did as well, a bill that creates a municipal gigabit broadband network fund. And we spoke about, and the joint standing, or the, excuse me, the nonpartisan legislative caucus spoke about this as well. The idea that there be magnet communities where we can sort of provide an aspirational model, help perhaps wake more creative juices elsewhere in the state by showing what's possible when you have truly high speed, gigabit symmetrical service in a community, and that does attract entrepreneurs and innovators. Is there a place for public investment in order to create that kind of magnet community and that kind of shining city on a hill example?
Sure, I believe there could be, and I believe there are examples already out there that the authority can point municipalities to, some of those not even in the state of Maine, where the municipality leveraged their ability and coupled with a provider. They actually built the facility and then contracted with a provider to provide not only the high-speed data service, but voice services and other ancillary services as well. So I think there are examples out there, and possibly some type of magnet group that could kind of alert people to what is there. There's no reason to recreate the wheel. Yes, technology is changing and it's advancing rapidly, and we need to keep our finger on that pulse to make sure we are using the best technology to provide the service. But there are examples out there today that I think we can all learn from, and I think this board should try to do that.
Thank you. So you would not be opposed to allocating some of the federal dollars, for example, to a fund like that, just to be clear?
No, I don't believe so. I'm not sure how much I would allocate, but I don't believe that would be a misuse of those funds.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Other questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, we appreciate your testimony and your joining us. And we'll go on to hear from members of the public if there are any wishing to testify on the nomination. Perhaps our committee clerk can advise me. Jordan, do we have anyone wishing to testify?
There was someone signed up to testify beforehand, but they're not on the Zoom, so it doesn't look like it.
Okay. Great. Just give me a moment. All right. All public comments having been taken, the committee will now proceed as follows. Review any additional written comments on the nomination that have been received by the committee. Hopefully we've already done that. Vote on the nomination and notify the president of the committee pursuant to Title III MRSA Section 157 and the joint rules. The vote must be taken within 35 days from the date of the governor's written notice. The hearing by the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Mr. Robert J. Souza of Durham for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. In accordance with the law, the committee may not take the vote on this nomination sooner than 15 minutes after the close of the public hearing, unless all committee members who are present agree. At this time, therefore, the chair will inquire whether any member present objects to proceeding to take the vote immediately. And seeing no objection, the pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend to the Senate of the 130th Maine Legislature that the nomination of Mr. Robert J. Souza of Durham for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. In accordance with 3 MRSA Chapter 6, Section 157, and with the joint rules of the 130th Legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending confirmation. A vote of no will be against the motion to recommend confirmation. Is the committee ready for the question? Representative Grochowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if we have enough members with their videos on. There we go.
Thank you, Representative Wood and Representative Grahowski as well for making sure.
Yeah, I'm just coughing a lot, so I didn't want to subject everybody to that.
Understood. Makes sense. And glad you're there. The committee clerk will proceed to call the roll.
Thank you very much, Representative Barry. We'll start with Senator Lawrence. Senator Lawrence is absent. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Senator Vitelli is a yes. Senator Stewart. Senator Stewart is absent. Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy. Representative Cuddy is also absent. Representative Grahowski.
Yes.
Representative Grahowski is a yes. Representative Kessler. Representative Kessler is absent. Representative Ziegler. Representative Ziegler is absent. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood is a yes. Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth is a yes. Representative Grignon. Representative Grignon is absent. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster is a yes. And Representative Carlo.
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes. That is 7 in favor, none opposed, the remaining being absent.
7 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative. It is the vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Mr. Robert J. Souza of Durham for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. And congratulations, Mr. Souza, we think, and very much appreciate your willingness to serve.
Thank you so much.
Great. And have a good rest of your day. We'll be in touch. That will bring us to our last but not least nominee of the day. Do folks need a short break, or are we ready to push on? Great. And it looks like we still have a quorum. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Schneider, for waiting. And we'll begin in just a moment. Representative Wood, thanks for sticking with us a little bit. Having a little technical trouble here. Oh, there it is. Okay, almost there. All right, and this is a public hearing of the committee for the purpose of considering the nomination by the governor of Mr. Timothy R. Schneider, Esquire of Falmouth, for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Again, under the laws and joint rules of the legislature, the committee is required to hold this public hearing and to recommend confirmation or denial of the nominee by a majority vote of the committee members present and voting. The chairs of the committee will then send written notice of the committee's recommendations to the president of the Senate. Once again, we will hear testimony from the governor or the governor's representative, the nominee, and others wishing to speak. We are still live streaming. Keep that in mind. And I'm going to ask once more that Representative Grahowski make this motion pursuant to Title III, Section 157 of the Maine statutes, which requires that there be an affirmative motion to recommend confirmation of the nominee. The chair now recognizes Representative Grahowski for the purpose of making that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Mr. Timothy R. Schneider, Esquire of Falmouth, for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority.
Thank you. And a copy of the statutory requirements for the position is available online. The chair now recognizes Commissioner Johnson one last time for the purpose of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Great,
Welcome
thank
back.
you. Representative Berry and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Heather Johnson, and I am the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. I'm here today on behalf of the governor to speak in support of the appointment of Timothy Schneider of Falmouth to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Mr. Schneider is a graduate of Harvard College with a degree in social studies and the New York University School of Law. After leaving NYU Law, he joined the Portland firm of Pierce Atwood, representing utilities and market participants in front of the Maine Public Utilities Commission, ISO New England, and federal courts on matters related to transmission planning and siting, wholesale market rules, and natural gas distribution. In 2013, he was confirmed as Maine's public advocate, a position he held for 4 years, setting strategy and managing a team of attorneys engaged in complex and often high-profile regulatory proceedings at the state and federal level, earning the Outstanding Service Award from the National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates. In 2017, Tim joined Tilson Technology Management, a high-growth telecommunications infrastructure deployment company, as their general counsel and a member of their senior management team. Tim's vast knowledge and experience in the industry will make him a valuable addition to the Maine Connectivity Authority. And on behalf of the governor, I urge you to support his nomination. Tim will be one of the members who possess expertise in advanced communications technology infrastructure and communications service. I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Do committee members have questions of the commissioner? All right, seeing none.
Thank you all.
You're off the hook. Thank you. And the chair will now recognize Mr. Timothy R. Schneider, Esquire, for the purpose of making a statement concerning his nomination. Welcome back to the committee, Tim.
Thank you, Chairman Barry. Chair Barry, Chair Lawrence, members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, I am honored and humbled to be nominated to the board of the Maine Connectivity Authority. And I really appreciate you all coming together for one more Zoom session to take up the board's nominations today. As I see this role, the board of the Maine Connectivity Authority's job is to support the staff of the authority once they're on board in bootstrapping an organization to deploy innovative approaches to dramatically expand access to reliable, affordable broadband in Maine. I have been working on this project for much of the last 15 years, and I am incredibly excited to be part of this opportunity. This work has been motivated by a fundamental belief, and we can get to sort of the technical details of my experience, but I wanted you to understand why I want to take on this role before we get started. I think this authority exists because the market mechanisms we use to incentivize broadband service don't ensure that broadband service is available everywhere. And just to put my cards on the table, I think it's unacceptable for people to not have access to essential services because of where they live. I'm willing to accept that every town might not have a sushi restaurant or a trendy cocktail bar, but it's not acceptable for rural communities to not have access to things like healthcare, education, or utilities because they're not close enough to a major city. I think there's been a consensus around this idea of universal service for electricity and even telephone service for over 100 years. And the experience of the last 2 years seems to have won over the last of those who doubted that broadband is also an essential service. That idea that geography should not be destiny is important to say in a fundamentally rural state like Maine. I think it's important because it's about individual freedom. These things make it impossible for individuals to live how and where they want.
Why?
Sorry, everyone. These things make it possible for individuals to live where and how they want, but it's also about the continued vitality of rural communities, like the one I grew up in upstate New York, and the ones I've lived and worked in Maine. If Maine communities want to be actual places where you can live and work and raise a family rather than destinations or places where one just summers, you need all this stuff. And we can get into the wonky details, and I'll go right there with you, talk about pole attachment, all that stuff, but I think it's important to start with the why, because if you get that wrong, if the authority gets that wrong, we'll definitely screw up all the how. I'll spend just a little bit of time talking about my background, so to orient you all, but I first moved to Maine in 2003, right after college. I was working in schools with the Maine Seacoast Missions EDGE program, which was starting, I think, a successful now model for rural after-school programming. I also recognize that I just admitted that I am from away, so if that's disqualifying, I can stop here. Though in my defense, I did have the sense to marry a Maine girl, so that's at least one thing. I left Maine in 2005 to go to law school with the goal of working on policy to help make broadband available in rural areas like Washington County, where I was working at the time, and have been working on broadband policy almost ever since. While in law school, I worked on broadband policy for a nonprofit advocacy organization in Washington, D.C., Public Knowledge, and I helped on an ultimately unsuccessful effort to build municipal wireless networks in Boston. While I was serving as main public advocate, I was deeply involved in the state's broadband policy, drafting, creating legislative strategy, and building coalitions to successfully enact multiple laws promoting expansion of broadband access in Maine, including support for community broadband planning, stabilizing funding for the Maine school and library network, and reforms to pole attachment rules. After my term as public advocate, I joined Tilson as its general counsel. At Tilson, we say we are on a mission to build America's information infrastructure. What that means is we design, we build, and maintain wireless and telecommunications facilities all over the country. The past 4 years have been an immersive experience of learning what it takes operationally, financially, legally, to deploy modern broadband infrastructure in both urban and rural settings, and to bootstrap a high growth company. To anticipate Representative Grochowski's question, over the last 2 years, I also served as chair of the board of a small but mighty Maine nonprofit, The Telling Room, that was able to accomplish extraordinary things with a small but dedicated and gifted staff, which I hope will be a similar model that the Maine Connectivity Authority will be able to emulate. I believe these experiences, living and working in rural areas without adequate access to broadband, developing and implementing state policy in Maine to support broadband deployment, and working to actively deploy broadband on behalf of telecommunications providers across the United States will be really valuable to the authority as it begins its work. Finally, I said I was humbled to be nominated, and there's 2 reasons. First, I just listening to the nominees this morning in particular, most of those folks were not people who are sort of the telecommunications usual suspects, and it's really an extraordinary group, and I'm honored to be among them. But also humbled because the Connectivity Authority has an immense challenge in front of it. Anyone who tells you they know precisely how to solve this problem should be immediately suspect. If it were easy, it would be done already. The funding from the state and federal government makes this dream of universal broadband service in Maine possible, but not necessarily probable. This is really hard stuff, and there's extraordinary challenges. It's going to be hard work. I'm incredibly excited about the opportunity to be part of it, and I'm looking forward to taking your questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tim, and it's good to see you again in front of our committee, as always. And for those that aren't aware, Mr. Schneider was the public advocate for a good long time in a previous life. And we'll go now to questions from committee members for Mr. Schneider. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Chair Barry, and welcome, Mr. Schneider, and congratulations on this nomination. You did mention one thing that did turn things around a little bit for me, and that was that you married a Maine girl. So that's in your favor. You did also touch on I guess, a bit of a nerve. You talked about how no one should be without high-speed internet or broadband. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm not going to ask it directly, that I've asked of various Connect to Maine people over the last 3 years that I've been on this committee. And although I agree, broadband, high-speed internet is very important to all of us, it is not free, and even these monies that this board will be responsible for overseeing coming from the taxpayers eventually. And so I've asked the question, at what point do we say that last mile is too expensive, knowing that numbers are, say, $22,000 a mile to string fiber? I won't ask you to give me that number because I never could get it from a Connect Maine person, but I will ask you if that is a consideration that even this board and ultimately the authority needs to keep in mind as they are possibly overwhelmed with spending the amount of money that supposedly is coming to us in the next 3 years. Thank you.
Now that question seemed pretty direct. So as I take it, the question was, is there a limit to how much we're willing to spend to get to that last location in Maine? And how should we think about spending the limited funds we have to to connect those homes, when particularly when we have other places, homes and businesses, I guess in some places. Yeah, that's a really good question. You can sort of see this in the Connect Maine Authority's numbers for their grants, right? They kind of got the low-hanging fruit with the first ones that they granted, and then the cost per location that they for their subsidies has risen over time, and that's true. That's true sort of everywhere you go. It's extraordinarily expensive both to reach those places and to build an operating model that can provide service to the most rural places in the United States. I don't know if there's an exact number. I think, the number when there was much less funds available to the state of Maine was definitely lower. The ability to spend was much less. I guess my thinking on this is, this is a tricky question. I think my thinking on this is this, that we actually for the first time have technologies that provide pretty good service for the very remote areas. And so I'm thinking of satellite broadband, I'm thinking of licensed spectrum. And I think that licensed spectrum that provide 5G services over long distances, those things provide service that would be the envy of a lot of rural communities right now that aren't particularly remote. I have personally been skeptical of the ability for those to provide really reliable service because, I have used satellite broadband. It's not really acceptable for your broadband service to not work when there's a snowstorm, for example. So I think that you reach a point where those are the optimal solutions because the cost of putting fiber is so expensive. But the more funds you have available, the more that you should be able to reach. I just gave you an indirect answer, didn't I?
Representative Foster.
Well, I think you covered quite a bit of ground for me. I didn't expect an actual number, but it's good to know that you're thinking of those things. I'm not sure where your born in Maine wife is from, but I would trust that if you haven't, you'll get a chance to visit some of the northern half of the state where these rural communities, getting broadband to them is a big challenge. And it's not just once you get to the community, it's just getting to the community. And it is a concern, however, and I know taxpayers in my area have actually turned down projects because they decided they couldn't afford to participate in their municipality. I'm hoping this will help change that. But again, I think it's important that we consider what are we willing to spend. So I think you answered it well. Thank you.
And by northern half, I don't think he means north of Bodenham. Just for the record. Other questions from the committee? Representative Grahowski.
Thank you. First, I want to say I appreciate that. It sounds like you have some experience working in Down East Maine way back, and this is a region that is definitely challenged for internet access. So I appreciate the perspective you'll bring to that, where we don't have necessarily people's residences representing geographic diversity. My question, though, is maybe you could elaborate a bit on what you characterize as a very successful nonprofit board that you're a part of and what you've learned from that experience leading that board that you would apply to this work.
Yeah, it's totally different. So I've led organizations before. I led the public advocate's office. And so coming into a board, I sort of assumed kind of knew how to do this. Being part of a board and particularly having a leadership position on the board was totally different. I think in two main ways. First, that your job is not to just set a goal, but to build a consensus among that group of people, and that's gonna be really tricky, right? People are coming to the board, lots of different experiences, and this board, the Connectivity Authority board, is no exception. And also, you are typically 1 degree removed. Once the Connectivity Authority's board is up and running, I expect that it would be a policy board, right? It would provide direction to the staff, the people who are actually doing the work. And so you're sort of that 1 degree removed from the actual work itself, which is sort of tricky because I always want to get in and do the thing, but that's not really the role when you're on a board. In terms of success, what made that organization successful was, telling youth stories, serving its mission. But in terms of the day-to-day operation of the board, what I always thought of as a success was that you spent your time on the board solving the problems, not dealing with interpersonal drama. And I find that like a really functioning board is built on mutual trust and respect. And so that you're able to just do the work rather than sort of internal politics of a board, which can be very real. And I'm sure, I mean, you are in politics, so you know this, but like that can be a real hindrance to a board's effective work.
Sorry, I was muted. Any follow-up, Representative Grochowski? All right. So I have a question, Mr. Schneider. I so appreciate what you bring to this, and it's almost the incredible strength that you bring as legal counsel for Tilson that gives rise to the concern behind this question. So I think you know where I'm going already, but I mean, Tilson is involved in everything, you know, in multiple aspects of broadband and even utility communications here in Maine, other pole owners, as well as our telecoms. I loved your passion for broadband as a utility, if you will, as a necessity for all. And I think the reality is that for most Mainers, it will never be a utility. It will be a patchwork, and it will depend on where you live. You know, you might have cable, you might have you know, satellite, you might have a local fiber provider, but we're heading towards a patchwork. And I think, you know, we all agree that we want that patchwork to be strong, a patchwork quilt, all right, that's nurturing and warm and supportive of all, and not a patchwork of political patronage. The work that Tilson is doing is tremendous. You guys have grown in leaps and bounds. It's incredible. You have a contract pending, as you mentioned in your in your disclosure with Connect Maine. In addition, I know that Tilson has done extensive work with a number of pole owners and has ties to both of the large T&Ds. I'm not sure about our largest ILEC providers, you know, contracts with many different providers in Maine. So my question for you is really, how will you navigate that? How will you ensure that not only the letter of the law regarding conflict of interest, but also you know, any possibility of appearance of conflict of interest, which could mar the very important mission that you're so passionate about, is avoided?
Yeah, Representative Barry, there's been a lot, you've asked a series of questions about conflicts of interest. It's one of those terms that's sort of like, it's kind of a boogeyman here. I'm really interested in how you think the potential conflict might, I'm happy to speak to the question, but it would be helpful if you could speak to how you think this particular conflict might manifest itself in the actual work of the authority.
A question in response to my question.
I can give you a more focused answer,
yeah.
but
no, I think what we're after here is, you know, in order to make sure that this incredibly important funding that we have, as I think one nominee earlier, you know, suggested, this is a 3-year opportunity. We have a window here. You know, we have 150 million coming in ARPA funds. There's more after that, it looks like. There's money going to municipalities. We have this really unique window and opportunity, and we have to make sure that that money is spent wisely and well, so that hopefully, you know, the public gains trust in this sort of model and you know, sees fit to see it through all the way, wherever that may lead. It is, I think, you know, clear in the law that there's a minimal expectation around conflict of interest, that you know, not voting on an award to an entity with which you have a direct business relationship is prohibited. But a secondary business interest or a business relationship, you know, a contract with the contractor, for example, is not mentioned. That is potentially an appearance of conflict of interest, depending on the nature of that award. So I have asked about it because this is true in a small state. It is true that anyone who has direct expertise in this industry here in Maine, is going to bump up against this. Because of Tilson's success, because of your success, you in some ways have that extra burden, I think, of responsibility. Okay. So my question for you is how you'll navigate that, how you'll work on the board to consider bylaws, adopt bylaws that would provide some further credibility and trust in the enterprise.
Okay, that's helpful. So first, I think the statute has some conflict provisions baked in, and I agree that the conflict provision in the statute, I think, should be regarded as a floor. Like, obviously, if you're on a board, you shouldn't be weighing in on contracts with an entity you have a financial interest in. So that's the minimum viable conflict of interest standard. So a couple things. First, I'm an attorney. We talk and think about conflicts all the time. That means I'm an officer of the court, and I take conflicts very seriously and think about them a lot, both in the sort of personally and professionally. I think it's worth naming what the specific conflicts here would be. So Tilson currently has a contract with the Connect Maine Authority. It's helping, and that predates any of this, administering grant programs and advising on the development of those grant programs. I don't work with that team. I don't part of that work. My job is being Tilson's lawyer. We have an affiliate, Tilson Infrastructure, which is a licensed competitive telecommunications provider in Maine. It owns, I think, 2 utility poles in the state of Maine, one in Standish, one in South Portland, or Biddeford, I think. And then we perform design, build, and O&M services for telecommunications providers, some of whom have territories or affiliates in Maine. That's like the bulk of Tilson's work. In 2020, that was about 2% of Maine's total revenue. I guess I certainly would avoid anything that would have the appearance of conflict. But I think sort of practically the way that risk manifests itself is like, I'm one member of a multi-member board. I would recuse myself from things that involve my company. And hopefully once it's up and running, the board is a policy entity and it's not making those types of decisions. I can't really do anything about sort of whispers in the appearance of impropriety or conflict. I conduct myself in my personal and public life as a person of integrity. And so hopefully that carries the day. But, if people want to tell stories, they always can. But the idea, right, that I would take a high-risk public role, sacrifice mine and my company's hard-earned reputation for integrity, violate state law, my oath as an attorney, also that Tilson can get some second-order design build contracts that are subject to rigorous state and federal public disclosure and audit requirements and can be canceled at any time. That feels like the risk feels attenuated, I guess. That said, I'm going to take every step I can if I'm nominated and approved for this role to avoid that appearance.
And thank you. And I do think of you as a profoundly ethical person. So I take a lot of comfort in that. The response concerns me a little because it sounded like you thought you were being accused of something. That is certainly not the case. It's more a question of how you think the board can take that floor, which we provided in statute around conflict of interest, and develop a more sophisticated set of bylaws that really prevent any pecuniary considerations from coming into play. So if you want to elaborate, I'd be pleased.
Yeah, so maybe I started with the place that I think that the board should start. Disclose your potential conflicts. I think that's the beginning of any good conflicts regime, is for parties to disclose their potential conflicts to each other so that everyone can have a candid conversation about that, whether that's encoded in bylaws or just the norms that govern the entity. But that feels like a good starting point. Many of the people on the board, I don't know their conflicts, but I think their potential conflicts, but that seems like a good place to start. Because I think it would be bad for the authority, which has a lot of very difficult problems in front of it, to spend time worrying about whether there are potential conflicts in how they conduct their work.
Mm-hmm. And finally, pole ownership. Can you speak to that at all? This entity has the ability to own poles, which is kind of interesting and intriguing. Tilson does do some work with pole owners, correct?
Not so in Maine, we have contracts with entities that own utility poles in the state of Maine. Some of them are pole attachment agreements, some of them are design build agreements. I'm not, I kind of don't view that as part of the connectivity authority's work out of the gate, at least, because I think it's mostly about expanding broadband access. But yes, Tilson does do work for entities that own poles in Maine and elsewhere.
Great, thank you. Well, again, I'm pleased that your expertise will be available to the board, and I think it is something that sometimes the more you know, the more you have to check. And really grateful for you stepping up. Other questions from the committee? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Schneider. And we'll proceed to hear from members of the public who may wish to testify on the nomination. I think, Jordan, we may have somebody. Is that right?
We do. I'll beam Nancy Smith across now.
Great. And I think there was another gentleman who had to cancel. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And Nancy Smith, the Honorable Nancy Smith, welcome. And it's good to see you again. Representative Smith was in the House when I first came in, and I'll always remember her that way. Please go ahead.
There's nothing like serving in the legislature, that's for
right.
sure.
That's right.
So I appreciate being launched into the panel framework with you. I am Nancy Smith. I'm Executive Director of Grow Smart Maine. So Representative Barry and members of the committee, I don't know how familiar you are with Grow Smart Maine, but our mission is to create lasting prosperity without sacrificing the quality of life that defines Maine. Through our advocacy work, we have focused both on broadband access for all Mainers and increasing renewable energy production throughout the state. And it's from this perspective that I am writing in full support of Governor Mills' nomination of Tim Schneider to the board of the Maine Connectivity Authority. I provided written testimony to the committee chairs and clerk. Hopefully it's been made to available to the committee members. But I want to touch on the key points that what Tim Schneider brings to this role, or would bring to this role, is a dignity and integrity that you've seen today with his testimony, let alone humor and being able to handle your child coming in to help you testify at a critical moment. That's an extraordinary asset. In addition, in my role in Grow Smart Maine, I have been a lead with the policy committee for the Maine Broadband Coalition. And in this role, I've truly appreciated Tim's competence in the regulatory policy and his knowledge of technical and financial aspects for deploying broadband. And I think this really brings together, I've been listening since 2 o'clock, the concern, the very legitimate concern about conflict of interest. And what we have in Tim is a person who has technical expertise that you need to be able to help form policy and make decisions that are for the best for the people of Maine, combined with this integrity and humanity that you're seeing today and that I've seen. Is it a decade? I lose track of how long I've been kind of interacting with Tim Schneider. But his unique mix of these personal attributes and his professional knowledge will make him an excellent member of the leadership team. Maine Connectivity has such, the authority has such phenomenal potential for helping us deploy broadband in a way, listening to Representative Foster and his concerns about last mile and others about the people in your district and how that's going to happen. I think he's going to add an incredible voice to the work that we all have to do ahead. And I happily support his nomination for Grow Smart Maine.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any questions? Great. Well, we appreciate your joining us today and your
Thank you
patience.
very much. No, thank
Taking
you
it
very
up
much.
till the
Thank you
end.
for your work.
All right.
Thanks.
And that will bring us to the conclusion of the public hearing portion. We'll now go on to take a vote. All public comments having been taken, the committee will now proceed as follows. Review any additional written comments on the nomination that may have been received by the committee. Vote on the nomination and notify the President of the Senate pursuant to Title III MRSA Section 157 and the joint rules. The vote must be taken within 35 days from the date of the governor's written notice. The hearing by the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Mr. Timothy R. Schneider, Esquire of Falmouth, for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. And in accordance with the law, the committee may not take the vote on this nomination sooner than 15 minutes after the close of the public hearing, unless all committee members who are present agree. At this time, therefore, the chair will inquire whether any member present objects to proceeding to take the vote immediately. And seeing no objection, we will go on to a vote. The pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend to the Senate of the 130th Maine Legislature that the nomination of Mr. Timothy R. Schneider, Esquire of Falmouth, for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. In accordance with 3 MRSA Chapter 6, Section 157, and with the joint rules of the 130th Legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending confirmation. A vote of no will be against the motion to recommend confirmation. Is the committee ready for the question? Seeing no discussion, we'll proceed to a vote, and the committee clerk will call the roll.
All right, we'll start with Senator Lawrence. He might be frozen. Senator Lawrence.
There you are.
No, I'm just muted. Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Senator Vitelli is a yes. Senator Stewart. Senator Stewart is absent. Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy. Representative Cuddy is absent. Representative Grahowski.
Yes.
Representative Grahowski is a yes. Representative Kessler. Representative Kessler is absent. Representative Ziegler. Representative Ziegler is also absent. Representative Wood. Representative Wood is absent as well. Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth is a yes. Representative Grignon. Representative Grignon is absent. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster is a yes. And Representative Carlo.
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes. That is 7 in favor, none opposed, with the remaining being absent.
7 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and 0 in the negative. It is the vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Mr. Timothy R. Schneider, Esquire of Falmouth, for appointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. Congratulations, Tim, and we fully expect sushi bars in every village and hamlet in Maine as a result of your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, and that does conclude our work for this afternoon. Tim, by the way, we expect your progeny to be testifying soon. Please bring them right onto the Zoom screen next time we see you. That was fun. We will be together in person next Monday. I do expect that the Senate will be able to vote on all of the recommendations of the committee. We'll leave that to Senator Lawrence, Senator Vitelli, Senator Stewart. This will conclude our work for the day. Thanks everyone for hanging in there. Special thanks to Jordan for coming back and helping us out today. Really grateful, Jordan, for your availability. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to call on you again if things work out. We do anticipate some interim meetings, so we'll be seeing each other again this way in the not so distant future. But in the meantime, hope everyone has a wonderful rest of July and August. Beautiful time in Maine, and hopefully you're not too close to broadband and other devices during at least some of that period. Any other business that folks want to raise? All right, seeing none, we'll see you all on Monday. And again, thanks to Jordan and thanks to all of you for sticking with it. We had just barely a quorum.